It's a done deal for the BYU football program. They've officially landed their transfer portal quarterback, and it's the name we've been mentioning all along. Gerry Bohanon, the former USF and Baylor quarterback, will be a BYU Cougar. What does he offer to BYU football this year? And also, obviously, how does he factor into the QB Derby alongside a guy like Jake Retzlaff? We're digging into that, and we're also catching up with BYU star guard Spencer Johnson as BYU basketball gets ready to take on Cincinnati in their Big 12 opener.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thanks to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For any of you who may be checking us out for the very first time, we are your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU sports. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's dive right in. And some good news, as it were, came yesterday as BYU officially, or I guess Gerry Bohanon officially announced that he is committed to the BYU football program as a grad transfer coming to BYU by way of USF. Previous to his time with the Bulls there in Tampa, Florida, he was a star at Baylor for the Bears, leading Baylor to the 2021 Big 12 title and a berth in the 2021 Sugar Bowl. So the one thing that I can say right off the top about Gerry Bohanon is it's been a long time coming. Any of you who, like I said, are everydayers or regular listeners of this podcast know that I've been mentioning Gerry Bohanon's name for quite some time. And I'll be honest, I thought at some point earlier this week that things may have broken down and it wasn't going to come to fruition, but he is officially in the fold and he'll be a member of the BYU football program. And I, for one, look forward to seeing what he can offer to BYU, because of the one thing I have mentioned before about him is, in my mind, he is a low-risk, potential high-reward type addition for the BYU football program. And let me explain why. Gerry Bohanon has sat out the entire past season, the 2023 football season at USF. He lost his position after suffering a season-ending injury 7 games into the 2022 campaign. He obviously faced off against BYU in that season opener in 2022 when BYU pounded USF. But he suffered a season-ending shoulder injury in the 7th game of the 2022 season, sat out the rest of that year. And then after they had a young quarterback really emerge for USF this season, he didn't see the field at all for USF. So he went looking for an opportunity to play at another program. And BYU, going back 2 years now, when he originally entered the transfer portal after leaving Baylor following his losing the starting position to Blake Shapen, who, ironically enough, just a couple of years later is in the transfer portal himself. It's just crazy how things seem to shake out in the college football universe these days. But nonetheless, BYU had interest in Gerry Bohanon back in 2021, going into the 2022 football season, but ultimately decided he was going to go to USF. So what does he bring to BYU? Well, like I said, he has the resume. He has led a team, speaking of the Baylor Bears, to a Big 12 championship. He led them to a Sugar Bowl in that same season in 2021. It was his best season by far individually for him. That 2021 campaign, he ended up completing 62.9% of his passes for 2,200 yards, had 18 touchdowns against 7 interceptions, and also added 323 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. I think that he has the skill set that fits exactly what BYU wants in their offense. He is a 6'3", 225 pound bowling ball of a quarterback who has a career number of 1,000 rushing yards. According to ESPN, they have 1,000 on the head as his rushing yardage for his entire career, playing at both Baylor and USF. And he's also tallied 15 rushing touchdowns. All of us watched BYU's offense flounder without the running ability with a guy like Kedon Slovis in this offense. Now, Kedon did his absolute best. I'm not going to denigrate him anymore than what I just said, because he did win 5 games for BYU. But the lack of running ability from a quarterback severely hampered BYU's offense. The coaching staff realized it and knew that, okay, when we go out into the portal, we have to find a true dual threat quarterback who can run the football. When you get a guy who's got 1,000 career rushing yards, an average of 5.4 yards per carry in his career, well, that is exactly what Gerry Bohanon offers to BYU. For his career, his 2 seasons, most notably of passing yardage, I mentioned the 2,200-yard campaign in 2021 for Baylor, and then in the 7 games he was at USF for, he played for, 91 of 160, so 56.9% completion percentage, 1,070 yards, 6 touchdowns against 6 interceptions. So the stats fell off, but I think the talent level from Baylor to USF was significant, because once again, we all watched what BYU did to USF in that 2021 campaign. So I think BYU is betting on a resurgent senior, I guess it'd be a grad senior year for a guy like Gerry Bohanon to come into BYU and do what he can do. Does he ultimately win the starting job? That is TBD. I am fully expecting him to compete for the starting position. There's no reason he would have come to BYU had he not expected that he would at least compete for that starting job. I don't think he's been promised anything. I think Kalani Sitake has made it very clear that BYU, when it comes to the transfer portal, they are not in the mold or mode of going out and promising guys you're going to be QB1 right from the get-go. And I would imagine that with this, Gerry Bohanon has been promised you can compete for the starting job, but you're not going to be handed it. You will have to win that job and beat a guy like Jake Retzlaff in that QB derby if you want to be QB1 for BYU. Does Gerry Bohanon have the chops to be a guy that can lead BYU? I think he can. He's got a career average of 7.3 yards per attempt for his career. He's got the ability to get the ball down the football field, and he's got to be able to show that consistent touch, especially when it comes to throwing the deep ball. All of us know that BYU's offense thrives on running to set up deep balls down the field that are those big chunk plays that Aaron Roderick loves to have as part of his offense. Many of you who watched that 2021 game when BYU took on Baylor watched Gerry Bohanon lead a very high-powered, and I would call it, they had a really hard-nosed style for Baylor that season that really yielded itself to what they did winning the Big 12 Conference that year. He went into the following spring ball going up against a star talent in Blake Shapen. Shapen won the job, and I got to give credit to Dave Aranda and his staff. They were very upfront with Gerry Bohanon, telling him, hey, we're going to go with the young guy here. We're opting to pick him as our QB1, and we're going to give you the opportunity before the transfer portal period ends to go out and find an option or options for yourself. And that's ultimately how we ended up at USF. So you may think I'm trying to blow smoke up your skirt and trying to pump up a guy that is not going to be the guy that you want him to be. And some of you are out. Trust me, the social media reaction, a lot of y'all are out on Gerry Bohanon. But I've got some sneaking suspicion. This is a kid who is hungry, who is chomping at the bit to be able to play football once again, and he wants to come in and prove that he can be that quarterback that led Baylor to that 2021 Big 12 title. Yeah, the stats aren't gaudy. They aren't outlandish. They're not 3,000 plus, 4,000 plus passing yards. I get all that. But I think that Aaron Roderick and his staff believe that this can be the type of player, speaking of Gerry Bohanon, that can come in and elevate BYU's quarterback play and at least give them the turnover averse quarterback. For his career, Gerry Bohanon's 26-13 touchdowns to interceptions. He is, like I said, he got the 15 rushing touchdowns for his career. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't see, I guess my stats here don't have fumbles on it, but nonetheless, he is a pretty turnover averse quarterback. And oh, by the way, that 2021 season at Baylor, you know who his offensive coordinator was, right? Yeah, that would be the one, the only Jeff Grimes. So he has run this BYU offense that Aaron Roderick runs here at BYU. Jeff Grimes and Aaron Roderick built it at BYU. Jeff Grimes took it with him to Baylor. Aaron Roderick kept it rolling here in Provo. So I can assure you that Gerry Bohanon's not going to come in here and be behind the 8-ball in terms of having to catch up and learn this offense. He's already played in it, and I think that should give him an advantage to come in and compete right away as soon as spring ball. I am fully expecting him as a grad transfer to be enrolled in school when BYU starts school on Monday. He'll be going through off-season workouts, going through spring camp and the like, and he'll be doing his best to win that quarterback job. I'm not going to say that he's going to win it outright from Jake Retzlaff, because I can tell you that Jake Retzlaff, from everything that I have seen and heard, he is fully intending to keep that starting position his. Obviously, after those 4 games he started down the stretch last season for BYU, but he knows that there's competition in the form of Gerry Bohanon. So looking forward to this. Like I said, I'm not going to try and sell you a false bill of goods. It is a risky proposition to bring in a guy like Gerry Bohanon, who hasn't played football in well over a year, suffered a season-ending shoulder injury that required surgery. Is there lingering damage in that shoulder? Is his throwing ability going to be the same as it was before the injury versus what he's going to be able to show at BYU here in 2024? All answers that we don't necessarily all questions that we all don't have answers to at the current time. But Aaron Roderick has staked his reputation and his job status, I guess I should say, on a guy like Gerry Bohanon, and we'll see where it ultimately lands. Now, one other guy to keep an eye on in terms of additions to the BYU quarterback room is a guy by the name of Trayson Bourget. I've probably mentioned his name in past years on this podcast because he was a guy that BYU had recruited out of high school. He went to South Point Catholic down in the Arizona prep ranks, went ultimately signed with Western Michigan, did start, I believe, 6 games this past year for the Broncos, and he entered the transfer portal looking for a new opportunity. And as I understand it, that he will be walking on to join BYU. I'm not saying that he is going to enter the mix and be a challenger to start right away for BYU, but to have a walk-on who's already got 6 games of FBS starting experience, that's a pretty solid thing to have in your back pocket if you're BYU. And the other thing about this is you add the likes of Gerry Bohanon. If Trayson Bourget ultimately works out and does end up walking on with BYU, you got a very stacked quarterback group. You have got Jake Retzlaff. You've got Ryder Burton. You've got Cade Fennegan. You've got Cole Hagan in there. You've got Noah Lugo coming in, who's enrolling the same time as Gerry Bohanon. And what I expect is Trayson Bourget will also be enrolling at the same time. That is going to be a ton of quarterbacks. I'm probably forgetting one or two. Who else am I? I'm also forgetting Nick Billups. Wow. I forgot about Nick Billups in that mix. Think of how many quarterbacks are going to be going through spring camp for BYU. I would imagine, I don't know this for sure, I'm not reporting this, I imagine there'll be some attrition. A guy or two may ultimately, after spring ball, decide, you know what, I'm not in the mix here. I'm going to go look elsewhere in that second transfer portal period, and you wish them well. But there is a lot of quarterbacks in that quarterback room, and I for one, do not envy a guy like Aaron Roderick and or Matt Mitchell, the assistant quarterbacks coach. I do not envy them trying to split up reps in spring camp, because there are far too little reps versus how many guys are in that quarterback room. And what are you going to do? You're going to say, okay, you Gerry, and you, Jake, are going to get the lion's share of the reps, and we'll divvy up the rest of them to the other guys. It just doesn't seem like a fair proposition, but we'll see ultimately where things land. And I will acknowledge it's a pretty gutsy move to bring in a guy that has not played in over a year in Gerry Bohanon, and ostensibly he ends up potentially being your QB1 in 2024. But I guess the one other thing I'll add to this is we saw BYU come just very, very close to getting a 6th win in 2023 with an offensive line that had issues, a running game that was awful, frankly, for most of the year. If you get those two things to improve, who's to say that Gerry Bohanon won't be enough to get BYU to a 6th win or potentially a 7th win? That is all stuff that will have to be answered in coming days and months, and will ultimately shake out where things stand after BYU gets their winter roster together, and whatever other transfer portal additions may join the program. Those can come at any time, like this one with Gerry Bohanon. There's a lot to break down, and we'll continue to track it all for you right here on Locked On Cougars. All right, we got to get to some other topics here on today's show. We got to talk some BYU basketball. They open Big 12 play tomorrow against the Cincinnati Bearcats. What is Mark Pope's squad going up against when they take on Wes Miller's side? Well, we'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, the NFL regular season is wrapping up this weekend, my friend, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets win or lose. Simple as that, everybody. The app is super easy to use. There are many ways to bet, like live same game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab, which you can kind of look around and say, oh, I like that bet, and take it. You also can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and compete against other people out there in the betting sphere. The best part is they also got simple bets as well. Spreads, player props, over-unders, money line. They've got it all for you guys at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup today. Once again, that's all courtesy of your friends at FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at UCCU. Learn and Earn. The UCCU mobile banking app is paying your entire family to learn about money. Obviously, we all want to be smarter when it comes to our money, and I have taken on a New Year's resolution this year to be smarter when it comes to my finances and learning about money. So I am using the Learn and Earn feature inside the UCCU mobile banking app. I have been a UCCU member since I was 8 years old, folks. I have been with them for decades. It's a great institution. They want to help you guys out. The best part is they break down these financial topics into fun, bite-sized educational games like quizzes and trivia. Every time a member of the family completes a topic, you earn points that accrue and can be redeemed for gift cards to places like Amazon, Apple, Sephora, Walmart, Nike, and many, many more. The best part is there's age-appropriate content for every member of the family. All can learn at the same time, track your progress on leaderboards, and it's also available inside the UCCU mobile banking app, making it as simple as playing it anytime, anywhere. And of course, the more you play, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you earn. It's all courtesy of Utah Community Credit Union and their award-winning Be Money Smart Youth Banking program, helping kids, teens, and parents have fun while becoming more financially literate together. It's all courtesy, once again, of your friends at UCCU. Love where you bank. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I want to remind you guys that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, is here for you 24/7. Come to the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel right now. All right. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day, everybody. And obviously tomorrow, BYU basketball opens Big 12 play against the Cincinnati Bearcats. This is a big, big game for BYU simply because it is the first ever Big 12 game for BYU in basketball. And the nice part is, unlike football where BYU opened on the road at Kansas, I was lucky enough to go there. This will be at home, and I will be there as well inside the Marriott Center Saturday night. I'm expecting 18,897 of you to be joining me there inside the Marriott Center. I'm expecting a pretty raucous atmosphere as BYU kicks off Big 12 play. Now, is this going to be an easy game? Well, according to ESPN's FPI, or is it the BPI Basketball Percentages Index, BYU is supposed to win pretty handily in this game, but I think it's going to be a little tighter than ESPN is predicting it to be. The one thing I know about Cincinnati, and they're similar to BYU, is they are an elite rebounding squad. Some of you may know the name Aziz Bandango, played for UVU last year. He's a true 7-footer, an absolute terror on the boards. He is suited up now for the Cincinnati Bearcats, but he's not alone in terms of that front court. They have Victor Locken, who is their leading scorer, who stands 6'11", 240 pounds. They've also got guys on the roster, including Jamil Reynolds, 6'11", 275 pounds. Sage Tolentino, who's just a freshman, so I'm expecting not to see him as much, 7'1", 240 pounds. Wes Miller, the Cincinnati coach, has made an emphasis on having a huge roster in terms of just height and wingspan. He's got guards who are 6'7". This is a big Cincinnati squad, and it's going to be an issue for BYU think to defend how big Cincinnati is. As I mentioned, Victor Locken is their leading scorer at 13.6 points per game. He's averaging 8.5 rebounds. The aforementioned Aziz Bandango, he is averaging 9.2 points per game, along with a healthy 9 rebounds per game as well. So it's going to be incumbent upon BYU in this game to rebound at a high level. The hope is that Fousseyni Traore will be able to go. Mark Pope kept him and Han at media availability that I was in attendance at on Thursday, saying they want him at full speed. And he told my radio show, DJ and PK on the KSL Sports Zone, that he's been a little hesitant in terms of playing full court right now. So that leads me to think that it's questionable for a guy like Fousseyni Traore to play in this game, which is going to make it doubly important for guys like Atiki Ali-Atiki and Ali Khalifa to be very, very smart in terms of avoiding foul trouble in this game. You can rest assured that Cincinnati Cincinnati is going to absolutely try and pound it on the inside and punish BYU on the boards and obviously just at the rim, as they should. They absolutely should be doing that. BYU's best counter is, yes, attack the rim when capable. Obviously, have a guy like Ali Khalifa and his ability to find guys who are cutting to the basket, making it easy for them to get buckets. That's great. But BYU's got to have another great shooting performance. And BYU's been very, very reliable at home this season. They're 12-0 at home, undefeated at home, and they've shot the three at a pretty high clip all season long to this point. Can't have that fall by the wayside in this game, because it's going to be, I think, a game that I would imagine that you're going to have Cincinnati coming in here thinking, okay, we're going to go at BYU and try and get after them. The one thing about Cincinnati as well is they don't necessarily shoot at an extremely high level. They're, as a team, averaging 45.7% from the field, just 35.1% from three. So this is not an elite shooting squad for Cincinnati, but they will bludgeon you. That's the one thing I know about them, is they were going to come after BYU, and I'm looking forward to this. It's a great opportunity to get BYU into Big 12 play before they go out on the road next week, and it would be nice to see BYU get to 1-0, and I'm expecting BYU to do it. I actually thought I get discounted BYU's chances according to ESPN Analytics. A matchup predictor has BYU 82.5% as the favorite in this game. Crazy to me, because I thought it'd be a little closer than that. But this is a BYU team who is averaging 90 points for the year, an average against of 61.5. That disparity has got them among the nation's elite. They're so highly ranked in KenPom. They're ranked 12th in the country in the AP poll. There's a lot of good things going for BYU basketball right now. The one thing you need to avoid if you're Mark Pope's squad is you just got to avoid foul trouble and having an off shooting night. But those are two things that in many respects, it all kind of depends on who the officials are in that game and how tight they're going to call it and how locked in are the guys. But what I know about this BYU basketball team is they are a team that doesn't rely on just one guy. Obviously, you have guys like Jackson Robinson who are starting to garner NBA draft hype. I think Jonathan Givony from ESPN and Draft Express has him as the 38th best prospect in this year's NBA draft. Okay, great. But the nice part is a guy like Jackson Robinson is not an every night leading scorer for BYU. We've had multiple games with guys across the roster who have led BYU in scoring. And it's that unselfishness, that selflessness, I guess I should say, about this BYU basketball team that I think is going to be one of their chief strengths as they go into this matchup against Cincinnati and go into Big 12 play overall. I've said my expectation for BYU is to go 500 in Big 12 play over these next 2 months. That'll be 9-9 across these 18 games. It's going to be a war of attrition in many respects for BYU. They got to avoid foul trouble. They got to continue to shoot the three at a high clip. They got to avoid injury as well. And we'll see how it goes, but get to 1-0 tomorrow, get off to a good start, and have that in your back pocket as you head to Baylor on Tuesday. Pretty quick turnaround, especially considering BYU does not practice or meet on Sundays, but this is what they signed up for, and it's real, folks. It is officially here, and I am looking forward to it. I'm going to finish out today's show with a couple of notes on other teams in action for BYU, but we'll also get to an interview I did during media availability, one-on-one with Spencer Johnson. It's his final run in a BYU uniform. He's going to only get this one chance to play a Big 12 schedule. I'll just say this, I'll tease ahead. He is very excited to be a part of it, and we'll talk with him coming up next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. All of us want to have tickets to the events we want to go to, and it'd be just so aggravating when you have a bad experience with a ticket broker out there that you're trying to get tickets from. That's where Game Time steps in, my friends. You shouldn't have to worry about that when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They want to make it as simple as possible and help you have a positive experience as well. The best part is Game Time is inside an app. The tickets reside there as soon as you buy them. 2 taps, you buy the tickets, you're done. You're off to the event. You pull them up on the app, they scan them, you're into the venue, and off you go. It's as simple as that, everybody. The best part about it is they have a ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see all in prices, so you know exactly what you're paying. There's no those hidden fees that seem to pop up from everybody else out there in the ticket world. They are just making it very straightforward. Once again, 2 taps, tickets are bought, and you're off to the event and go and enjoy the time rather than having that aggravation of having to worry about what you're doing. So download the Game Time app today, my friends. Create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. It's a Friday, folks. Bear with me, but nonetheless, thank you for joining us. Please join us on the subtext community if you have not done so already. It's a way to directly communicate with me via text messages that come directly to your phone. I'm passing along insider information that I'm getting up to the minute. As soon as I get it, I'm passing it along to our subtext community. We're 50 plus strong at this point, have plans to get into the hundreds in the relatively near future. Free 14-day trial, then $4.99 a month after that if you want to be a part of that, and obviously have direct access to myself. And it's been really fun. It's been a great way to interact and have interaction on the show as well. So a big thank you to all of you. And some of you have asked, hey, Jake, why did you stop giving away tickets? Well, I decided, you know what? I'm taking the tickets off the market and rewarding our subtext community. So if you're on the subtext community, you have a chance to win the tickets we have for BYU basketball games and the like. So I would encourage you to sign up today. Once again, a free 14-day trial. You can sign up. Just click the link in the show notes below this, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us today. It's been a really, really fun run over the past month plus that we have been doing it. All right. Before we go here on today's show, obviously a big weekend ahead. Once again with BYU basketball opening up Big 12 play, and looking forward to that. It's going to be huge to see that. The 9th-ranked BYU men's volleyball program, they host Ball State in back-to-back matches tonight and tomorrow night inside the Smith Fieldhouse. You have women's gymnastics taking on Oregon State down in Las Vegas at the Orleans Arena. Women's basketball is taking on Iowa State tomorrow afternoon in the Marriott Center. If you're looking for something to do a double header at 4 o'clock tip between the Cyclones and the Cougars in that one. That will also be on BYU Radio 107.9 FM and Big 12 now on ESPN Plus. So big opportunities for BYU, and BYU men's basketball once again tips off 8 o'clock on ESPN2. Looking forward to that matchup, and I can tell you that Spencer Johnson's looking forward to it as well. Had a great opportunity to sit down with him during BYU media availability yesterday. Without further ado, we'll wrap up today's show with a one-on-one with Spencer Johnson.
Big 12 play is here. We've been talking about this for 2 years now, getting ready for this, but how cool is it to feel like, hey, it's here and it's ready to roll?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, you flip on the TV and it's usually a Big 12 team, primetime games.
Yeah.
Every conference game is like, really good team, really high-level athletes. They can shoot, they can score, they can rebound. So it's super exciting to be here. Excited to see where we're at compared to all these other teams and get after it.
We talk about like where you guys are at. You're 12-1. You're ranked 12th in the country. Like, how do you feel the non-conference slate went?
I feel like it went really well. I feel like we found who we were, our strengths, our weaknesses, things that we need to work on. So excited to put those, things to the test against really good teams and just keep getting better.
You talk about watching those teams in prime time. How excited are you to play the likes of Baylor down there in Waco, going to Fog Allen, Kansas, et cetera?
Super excited. As a little kid growing up, you dream like, oh, I want to play against the best. And these teams, consistently year after year after year have been the best. They've been the top teams. So it's going to be super fun to get in there and just get to work on them.
Obviously, Cincinnati is your first game. What do you expect from the Bearcats? I know that Aziz Bendago from UVU is on that roster. We'll see if he's able to play. But what do you know about the Bearcats?
I know they're big. They rebound really well. They have a couple really good shooters. So it'll be a fun challenge for us. Fun challenge to try to, out-rebound them and control them on the glass, as well as, get out in transition and just do what we do.
Well, you guys are a pretty good rebounding team in your own right, especially on the offensive glass. Is that just an emphasis you guys have had all season long?
Yeah, it is. We have these certain goals that we try to hit every game, and one of those goals is like, hey, we want to get up, X amount of three-pointers, and we're going to shoot the ball. We're going to work really hard to get really good shots, and we're going to shoot it confidently. And even if we miss, we're going to go get the offensive rebound. Okay. And that's been a huge, you call it a secret sauce, but it's not really a secret, right? to just our success.
So is part of that is just the idea of getting extra possessions?
Yeah.
I cover a lot of NBA hoops in my job, and they talk all the time about getting extra possessions because that can be a killer.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, you look at several games we've had this season where it's like, oh, we're up, 10, 12 points, and then all of a sudden we go on a run and we're up 25.
Yeah.
It's because we get a couple offensive rebounds, we kick it out, we're out in transition, and it just crushes people.
What about this year's team? It seems like they're very unselfish. Was that something that you guys put together, I guess, on your trip overseas? Was it just a lesson you guys learned from last season? What caused that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of time spent together in the off season. Like, we had a bunch of weeks leading up to our foreign trip over to Italy, which really helped us out. We were able to play over there some really good teams. Like, we played the best team in Croatia. Yeah. A bunch of like pros, grown men, and so it was really good to just like see where we were at. Again, see some things we needed to improve on, and like I said, one of our emphases was like, hey, we work hard to get good shots for each other, and that's been just huge for us. Like, we're happy for each other. Don't really care who scores 20. It's just like, hey, we won by 30, and we're happy.
When I ask about two of your teammates real quick, obviously Ali's been a sensation. They called him the Egyptian magician for a reason. We had Coach Pope on the radio station. He said that he ruined his assist-to-turnover ratio with an 8-to-1 ratio. But how good has he been in your mind?
Oh, it's just unbelievable. It's like, it's what I imagine playing with Jokic would feel like.
Okay, fair enough.
Just the way he sees the floor, like he's 7 foot, so he can see these angles that normal people can't really see, and just the way he delivers the ball in the right spot sets you up for such easy baskets, and he makes it look really easy. So I guess you watch film and you're like, oh yeah, whatever, like that was a good pass, but like you don't realize how hard some of these passes are, and just like the angles that he sees them at, and it's so fun to play with.
I also wanted to ask you about Jackson Robinson. He's getting some NBA draft buzz. He's just a very smooth operator, is the way I kind of perceive him to be. But what have you made of him and the kind of leap he's taken this year?
Totally, yeah, well deserved. I mean, he worked super hard this offseason, consistently just putting up tons of shots. After practice, before practice, really working, on his offensive game. His defensive game has been a big focus for him, and he's just taken a big step. So super proud of him and well deserved.
Where have you taken the biggest step as a player?
A big step for me, I think something I've been really, really focused on and really working on was just my overall communication in terms of like leadership. Where coming in as a senior and one of the older guys on this team is just like, hey, Spence, this is your last year. This is like, this is your team. You've been here. You know how it works. We need you to have a voice. We need you to be a leader for these guys. And that's something I really tried to take a step in and take ownership of.
Last thing for me, not to look too far ahead, but what's next for you? Because this is your final run. Like, what is next?
For me personally?
Yeah, pro ball, like what do we
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I mean, we'll see how this Big 12 conference goes, but hopefully we'll have some really good opportunity. And we were talking before this, but I served my mission in Italy. Yeah. So I spent a couple years over in Europe, and if I had the opportunity to go back there, it definitely would be pretty cool.
Well, Eric, Mika, and Jonathan Tavernari can help you out in that respect.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, well, Spencer, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
There you go, Spencer Johnson, BYU star, a senior guard. It's crazy to think that this is his final run in a BYU uniform, but he has been like that steady Eddie, a player for BYU. When they need a big bucket, they seem to toss it to Spencer, and he's able to find his way to the hoop and get a big bucket. He's been shooting the three at a pretty high clip. I really appreciate what Spencer Johnson is doing for this BYU basketball program, and the hope is that, as he mentioned, that going forward, he'll get an opportunity to play professionally, whether it's overseas or elsewhere, that he gets that opportunity to go and continue to have his playing career become his career for a time, and we'll see how things ultimately shake out. But I have been appreciative of the way that Spencer has kind of conducted himself at BYU. He's become essentially a team spokesman at times when other players aren't necessarily as keen to talk to the media. Think back to last season when they had some of their struggles, one of their worst seasons in recent memory. It seemed like Spencer Johnson was speaking all the time during that, but I really appreciate the way that he conducts himself, and I look forward to seeing seeing what BYU is capable of doing in this game against Cincinnati. I'm expecting a win for BYU. I'm expecting a pretty handy win. I think like 10 points would be the margin I would imagine for the Cougars, but we'll be out there. And the plan is with Big 12 play, I guess I can lift the lid on this as well. We plan to get back to doing our postcast editions of the podcast. These are Big 12 games. They're huge. They have implications, obviously, for BYU. Every single one of them. So the goal is to have a postcast edition of the podcast. It's a shortened version for those of you who are maybe unaware of how we operate with those, listener feedback and the like on the games themselves. So win, lose, or I guess we don't have draws anymore in college basketball, but we'll have coverage for you guys. I want to encourage you guys to be a part of it starting tomorrow night after BYU takes on Cincinnati. It'll probably go up late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, but stay tuned for that and look for that over the weekend. And obviously coming back on Monday, BYU football has officially begun school, so we'll have plenty of coverage on potential other transfer portal additions to announce over the weekend. If there's ones that break, I'll probably do a YouTube short like I did right after the news of Gerry Bohanon broke yesterday. To catch up on that, and obviously have a full recap of whatever happens over the weekend on our Monday edition of the podcast. So as always, thank you once again for making it Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And truthfully, I say this all the time. It can sound like I'm just saying it to say it, but I really do appreciate all of you who are everydayers with us here on the podcast as well. So until next time, whether that's on postcast or on Monday, whenever that is, thank you once again for being a part of the Locked On Cougars podcast.